Um, our topic for this morning is a roadmap for dealing with Muslim teens. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, وَلَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرِ. And you have a great example in the living, in the role model of our beloved Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, in the way he lived his life, the way he conducted himself. One of what made Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam unique was the fact that he played several roles. He was a military leader, he was a state leader, he was a parent, he was a neighbor, he was a teacher, he was a role model in all aspects of a human being that could be. SubhanAllah, in the sessions yesterday, several of the sessions, our beloved speakers spoke about how our Prophet ﷺ was a manifestation of a perfect human being. I mean, how can we try our best to imitate the attributes, or not imitate, but try to follow and follow the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How can we be generous? How can we be merciful? And so forth. One of the key attributes that we'll try to shed some light on today is how can we be good parents? What is the role model? How should we be dealing with our teens? Part of that challenge, as you know, the parents in the room and inshallah the rest, part of those challenges is understanding the dynamics of the environment that our teens are living in today. For myself and probably a lot of us, the cultural background, the time that we grew up in when we were teens, etc., there are drastic differences between the challenges that our teen facing today and the challenges that we faced in our time, or geographic locations or cultures that we were facing in our times. So in order for us to know how to deal with teens, it's extremely important to have a good understanding of the challenges they are facing, and the psychological aspect, the social aspects, and so forth. Inshallah, we'll be addressing some of those, the maturity stages that our teens are going through. And both of our speakers, inshallah, will be addressing different areas. Brother Altaf Hussein will be addressing the turbulent nature of the stage of puberty, that maturity stages that teens go through, both physically and emotionally, and the growing pains experienced by teenagers, specifically American teenagers. Brother Edmund, inshallah, will be addressing some of the do's and don'ts. What are some of the best practices? How can we have a successful Muslim family dealing with teens? Brief intro, and I won't take too much of your time. Brother Altaf Hussein is a native. He will be joining us soon, inshallah. He's a native of Cleveland, Ohio. His research and interest includes the integration of immigrant and refugee families, especially in the Muslim adolescents in the United States. Dr. Hussein is a two-term national president of MSA, MSA, National Muslim Student Association, a current executive committee member of MENA, Muslim Alliance for North America, a faculty member of Compass, which is the state-of-art management training program of MSA National, a chair of Leadership Development Committee for ICNA, and the Peaceful Family Project, dedicated for the preservation of domestic violence. Dr. Hussein lives with his family in Northern Virginia. Inshallah, he will be joining us soon. Yep, he's walking with us here. Brother Edmund is beloved. He's a licensed clinical social worker, licensed school social worker. He's a graduate student of University of Illinois at Chicago, Jane Addams School. He is the founder of the HeartSpeak Institute, and I encourage every one of you to actually visit the website heartspeak.org. That's right, heartspeak.org. I remembered. That was not in the notes, by the way. The goal of the institute is to provide counseling and educational services to individuals, couples, and families. Without further ado, inshallah, I'll turn it to Brother. Should we start with Brother Edmund, inshallah? Okay.
I start with a brief introduction and then you go, and then because my do's and don'ts, if I start off with that, it's
that's true. Yeah.
Do you need a minute? We can take a minute, inshallah.
I can buy you 2 minutes.
We'll just give a little bit of background, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi salam. So I'd like to talk briefly about something, one of the unique opportunities that I have as a counselor in the larger American community, in that I work in a high school full-time, but then I have a private practice where I work primarily with the Muslim community. And so I'm constantly trying to find that meeting point where our religion and our faith crosses with modern research. And it does two things for me. It helps me work with my clients, but it also makes my faith that much stronger, because it helps me realize that when you see research is suggesting our way of life in so many different ways, then it makes you that much more confident that not only are you living the right path, but then the science is supporting it as well. And one of the ways recently that it's doing that is with brain research. And there's a lot of research out there now on brain development. And one of the things that they're finding most significant about this, there's two main areas that that's really shedding a lot of light on. And the first one is drug and alcohol use, and I'm not going to talk much about that today, or at least in this lecture. And the second one is on teen development and teen brain development. And that is that, and I'm just going to kind of set the stage here and get everybody thinking about the teen brain and what it's experiencing. And what I want you to think about is that at the age of about at about 11 years old for girls, a little bit older for boys, probably about 12, 13, the brain goes through its kind of last big growth spurt, and it spends the next 8 years or so kind of pruning back and getting rid of the growth that it doesn't need. So if you picture a bush in the springtime and how a lot of time it just explodes, and then it doesn't really look so good. It's just kind of like all scraggly looking, and so what we do then, or the person who takes care of your yard, or yourself if you like gardening, is you'll trim it back and you'll make that bush look really nice. And that's kind of what's happening to the teen brain. And so as a result, that explains a lot of the behavior that we see in teenagers. So when we look at the title, Dealing with the Muslim Teen, it almost sounds like just dealing with it, like it's frustrating. And it can be frustrating at times, but it's also a very blessed time in that there's lots of energy, there's lots of passion about whatever they direct their passion towards. But our goal is, like the brother said, is trying to direct them as well in a way that's going to be constructive and good for them in the long run, inshallah. And when we think about what we want ultimately, what do we want for our teenagers, or what do we want, what's our goal as parents, sometimes we lose sight of that. And so if I were to survey the room and say, what do you really want for your teenager? And it really boils down to something like, we just want them to be happy and successful and a good Muslim, something like that. And I would agree with that as well. I have a teenager, and so a lot of the stuff that I talk about is going to have a lot to do with my own experiences as well, but just dealing with hundreds and hundreds of teenagers in my office. And talk about brain development. We're talking about this brain going through this huge growth spurt, and a lot of time that does affect them emotionally. It affects them chemically. I mean, it's whenever there's any kind of big growth spurt in the body, there's changes, sometimes those growing pains. Those growing pains, they refer to physical pains when the body goes through a growth spurt, but we see them as a family when a teenager sometimes goes through that growth spurt in their brain. And so as a result, what we need to consider is that research is showing now that the female brain isn't really fully developed until about the age of 23, and the male brain about the age of 25. And it's funny because when I reflect back on that, about when I was 25 years old, I remember thinking at about the age of 25, yeah, I think I could get married now. But before that, I didn't really feel that way. And it's just coincidentally that when I read this research. Now, what you'll find, and then I'm going to hand over to Brother Hussein, what you'll find is it's, when you look at just anecdotal data, for example, something like car insurance, right? When do your car insurance rates drop? At the age of 25. Now, why is that? It's because they all of a sudden, they realize that all of a sudden, for some reason, at about that age, you know, early 20s, the risky behavior, risky driving, traffic tickets, they all go down. And so car insurance drops at that age. And so this is another example of how we need to keep in mind that, and the goal in keeping it in mind is to be patient with our teenagers, because they're not dealing with the full intellect that we are as adults. And you can reflect back on yourself at that time. It's nothing against them. It's a growth pain that they're going through, and unfortunately, as a result, we pain too as parents. And the whole goal of mentioning that is just to encourage you to be patient during that time. And I'll talk a little bit more about, in my do's and don'ts, about how we can do that. Brother Altaf.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. My dear respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. It's really an honor and a pleasure for me to join you today. If my voice sounds like it gave 6 lectures yesterday, it did. And then it flew from San Francisco to Chicago this morning, and then here I am. So forgive me if it sounds like I'm slightly out of it. It's no offense, hopefully, to you. This session, when they first sent it to me, I thought, subhanAllah, a whole conference should be held just on this, the roadmap for dealing with Muslims, because my wife and I, are raising 2 boys, 8 and 4. Before we blink, they're going to be in that category of at least the early adolescence, and subhanAllah, Omar at 8 is testing me with early adolescence already. And so how would we deal with it? Then if you look around at the national scene, the hatred against Islam, and it's not a phobia. So whenever you hear people say Islamophobia, do a mental check and correct yourself and say, it's not a fear, because fear, the counselors can work on it and say, get over it, let's take you to the heights, and you can work on your fear of heights. It's not a fear of Islam, it's a hatred of Islam. And I'll tell you where the hatred comes from. One of the major reasons for the hatred of Islam is that people in that age group, when they should be, on the whole, abandoning their religion and really going into what Brother Edmund said he wouldn't talk about, which is the drug use, alcohol, fornication, all of that, on a large scale, alhamdulillah, are not doing it. Now, I don't live in a cocoon or in some cave. I don't deny that it doesn't exist. It does exist. There are Muslim youth who are clearly in the juvenile justice system, whose families have been torn apart because of their behaviors. They're truly testing their families with repeat offenses, going in and out of the jail for the sometimes similar or same offenses. There are those clearly who have left the home completely and have abandoned it. But to me, that's a minority. To me, that's not where we focus our attention on. So when they said, let's talk about the physical, emotional growth, the stages of puberty and all of that, I said, what, subhanAllah, that's a great place to start. Why? Because oftentimes we ignore the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already blessed us with this guidance and through the hikmah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to know who it is that we're raising in our households. Who is it that's around us? So you had teenagers, technically, if you will, speaking in that, and I don't even like the word teenager, just a demarcation of a child's growth, meaning the end of the number is a teen. So after 12, it's 13, 14, that's it. In Islam, it's actually what? In Islam, it's the age of balagha, of puberty. That is the critical age. That could occur at any time. It could even occur before 13 or even 12. And subhanAllah, the research is showing now, based on the use of hormones and steroids in the meat and the chemicals used in our foods for the last several decades, there are now reported reports of girls, young females, truly developing puberty, signs of puberty at the age of 9 and 10, subhanAllah. At the age of 9 and 10. So that means that they're dealing with some of the things that would normally occur at 13 and 14. And with the maturation of the brain, as Brother Edmund talked about, at that age, at a much earlier age, without the same requisite guidance, either from their parents or from the system or anybody ready to manage that. So what do we do? Well, we also think about the fact that you look around and the entire country, all of America in terms of national security, to me, that's even 0.00001% of the youth, because maybe about 20 Somali youth have actually left America in their teenage years to go, and fight, they say, for their homeland in Somalia or anything else. But on the most part, our youth are not radicalized. On the most part, our youth are not living lives of evil or sin or other things. Let's be very clear, because I like to start off optimistic, not suddenly say, oh my God, those teenagers. No, we're not facing that. We have issues, clearly we do. We need more counselors, yes we do. We need more youth training programs, summer camps, yes we do. But where do you begin? Well, you begin with the fact that you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed the human body with going through certain physical stages of development. Things that if we don't take track, if we're not familiar with, aware of, we will actually deny the fact that the physical, the biological, does impact on the psychological. That the physical growth processes do impact on the psychological growth processes and the emotional growth processes. And that connection, our dua, is that they can inshallah be like the youth of Aisha radiallahu anha, who herself was an early, if you will, an early teen, entering into marriage with the Prophet ﷺ, a beautiful marriage, and let no one make you think otherwise of anything of what that was, except for a beautiful marriage, definitely sanctioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then you have examples of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, also a young man. All of the Ibadullah, Abdullah ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Abbas, all of them were early teens, if you will, and then subhanAllah, look what they became, and really what came of that. Now, if you go back and think about some of these physical stages of growth, one of the things, and this is not new, so I won't delve into this, and I'm really hoping we can save some time for the questions and answers, because that's where we actually have the learning. It's not that we just come and kind of blah, 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 talk, and then you sort of take notes. It is true that for the young boy and girl at that age, in the early teens, they truly believe that they can conquer the world. They truly believe they have the energy given to them by Allah Azza wa Jal. Given to them by Allah Azza wa Jal. I know that in the late teens, when I entered college, I know that I could stay awake for 2, 3, 4 days, sometimes with like a little bit of nap, and then suddenly, subhanAllah, go on without food and still function like I was normal, and people would look and say, man, you don't sleep, or you don't eat, right? But after a while, you can't do that anymore, am I correct? Tell me somebody from college that can live the same schedule now. I can't live the same schedule. When I landed at O'Hare, I said, if I don't sleep for 2 hours, I'm going to actually just fall asleep on stage. Because I'm 40, I have 2 boys, right? I'm just celebrating my 13th wedding anniversary weekend. Instead of being with my wife, I'm here with you guys. Allahu Akbar. Right? SubhanAllah, think about that. And it's an amazing, I just say also that the weekend that we got married, that we had the kitab on a Friday, on a Saturday, I'm sorry, and I left on Sunday to one conference to volunteer, and my wife left Sunday the morning to Maya, and I was at Ayana, and then we met back at Maya in Chicago, subhanAllah, right? Or in Detroit, sorry. So this is the way, right? So the first thing is that it's these massive, massive bursts of energy that comes inside them. So how do you deal with that? What is the roadmap to deal with that? You know how our massages deal with that? Sit in that corner, don't move, you're fidgeting too much. Are you kidding me? When I was growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, in the middle of winter, when I was like 12, 13, I was a part of the MFL. I don't know if you know what the MFL, it's all across the country, all across the world. It's the Masjid Football League, right? Where better can you find a carpeted area with marks for the yard lines, which are about 2 inches apart, right? For a long pass, you got to get the energy out of your system. And you're telling me to sit still? Are you kidding me? My son Omar now, if you open the door and it's good weather outside, he can stay outside all day and he'll never feel tired. So the first sign of the physical, the entering into adolescence is the energy level, the sheer energy level. For men and for women, similarly, more so for men, Allah knows best why. We don't get into the whole, it's not an equity issue, it's just that's how it is. And sisters say, alhamdulillah, that you don't have that issue as some of us did growing up. Then you have, of course, the issue of the idea of growth spurts. So some experience either incremental height growth, or sudden staggering, like they go to bed like at 3 feet 2 or something. And they wake up at 4 feet 5, you're like, what happened? Like, what happened to you? They're, I don't know, I just slept for 20 hours. Did you also notice that? They sleep for a long time. He said, you can wake them up for Fajr. They wake up, they pray. Alhamdulillah. They wake up, they pray, they go back to bed, and they can still sleep an entire 8-hour cycle again as if they never slept the day before. Like, what happened to them? They can eat to satisfy that appetite. There's a new generation growing up in America. When we were growing up, those pizza slices were too big. They would even cut the pizza slices in half to make more barakah and make the masjid, more kids be fed. You know what they do now? They actually, in front of my eyes, if I work with the youth group, I can't even blink before the pizza is gone. They take a slice, they bend another slice on top of it and eat that. Yeah, Allah. Like, what happened, guys? Guys, it has a flour and then sauce and then cheese for a reason. You don't have to add another flour, sauce, and cheese on top of that and make it a pea sandwich. It's a pizza. It's not a pizza sandwich. But they finish that and 6 of them in front of you, and then you wonder what's going on. The problem with that, we also feed that same thing, especially for the boys. When I did research with Somali youth, I found the boys were much more in. Why? Almost always the community said, oh, for the boys, we don't really have much structured programming. It's difficult, Why is it difficult? So we just give them pizza and basketball. And the sisters, no, mashallah, we have halakat. They have to know manners, because they're going to be a wife someday. Who do you think they'll marry? That guy on the other side eating pizza and playing basketball all day long, having absolutely no clue what it means like to be a husband. Physical growth spurts are there. The curious thing is that those also impact the self-esteem. Because I clearly did not grow tall as fast as the average American because I was Indian, mashallah, tabarakallah. And so, but I was in 6th grade and they would look at me like, dude, who are you? Right? You're like a foot shorter than the most of us. And they would look at me and then it started affecting me. But then, I'd go home and my parents would be like, no, son, you're the tallest in our family. Allahu Akbar for your age, right? I'd feel great, I'd go back, I can do this, I can take on the world, right? For the sisters, not to be too, yes, there's physical developments. They start to, the breasts start to emerge. And that has an impact on the self-esteem. Why? Society favors a kind of shape that Allah knows when it existed, if it ever existed, and if it ever exists again. But these sisters are watching, reading magazines and books and being told this and that, and then they start to have an impact on their psychology. And we, almost like reinforce that negative. And sometimes we say, what's wrong with you? Why don't you dress and look better? She's like, I'm looking the best I can. No, you have to show your features. Allah blessed you, ni'mah. She's like, they're not coming yet. What can I do? I don't want to be gross about it, but this is us. We don't even think about it. Why? Because we're thinking Western style. We're not thinking that Allah is blessing me with a child, and may Allah be, Allah's mercy that she's not, subhanAllah, doing any kind of evil or sin or anything. She's in my house, she has haya, and this should be the beauty that I admire. Another aspect of the growth, along with in line with the physical aspects, is the fact that yes, they will experience, and by the way, most Muslim children are not ready for the wet dream. A part of the physical growth is that their brain starts to function in such a way that they will wake up one day with a mess in their bed, and nobody ever told them what that's going to be. I was working with some youth one time, and I was awake just a little bit before Fajr, and I don't sleep much anyway. We can have a whole lecture about how to manage your sleep and not sleep more than 6 hours. You can do it. 4 hours maximum, for about 4.5 hours, maybe, 3.5, 4, or 6 hours maximum. But you know what? I heard some noise in the room. And I was like, what's going on? Before Fajr, one of the young boys is awake. He was actually picking up the entire mattress and trying to walk outside so he could leave it outside to dry before. And I looked at him and said, I won't say the name. I said, where are you going? He said, no, it's okay. I wasn't comfortable with this. I'm going to try to sleep on the floor. Alhamdulillah. But he didn't have a clue. Or if he did, he was ashamed. But do you know that the Prophet ﷺ, he was asked about this even by Salama, subhanAllah, about this. That what about this? What about this aspect of what men and women see in their dreams? If we don't prepare our children for this, which is a natural part of their growth, they will actually think something disgusting out of it. And there's nothing, as Allah knows and the Prophet ﷺ taught us, nothing disgusting about the natural processes of human beings. Which is why the Westerners always look at the Prophet ﷺ and reduce him to nothing and say, look, how could he ever teach them to lead a world? He was talking about using the bathroom. But you know how many issues come out of hygiene from the bathroom? SubhanAllah. SubhanAllah, think about that. Tremendous numbers of issues come out of just basic hygiene in the bathroom that we teach our children at an early age. And the other aspect of it is what? That we teach us to love what Allah blessed us with. وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ, that we created mankind in the best of molds. That Allah also knew the mental, the biological, and the emotional processes. We know what's in your hearts. We're closer to you than your jugular vein, Allah tells us. If we teach our children to accept these physical and emotional sort of growth processes, then they will actually embrace adolescence, as opposed to trying to match somebody else's conception of adolescence, which is most often based on a dunyatic or sort of a physical Western concept of maximizing your pleasure during those years. Am I right or wrong? Maximizing your pleasure during those years. Oh, don't worry about responsibility. Don't worry about doing anything. That's why you're blessed with all this energy. Do whatever you want. No, Yaqeen. No, in this religion, the moment they enter puberty, balagh, they're able to discern between right and wrong. We held them. Now you are held accountable for everything that you do. For everything that you do. Therefore, make sure that the power in your eyes, many of them, mashallah, tabarakallah, don't need glasses during that age. Many of them, unless it was passed on like my dad and his dad before him, they passed on something in the eyes. So we needed glasses early. But most of them have beautiful vision. If you teach them, use that sharp vision to memorize the Quran. And I said this about 10 years ago in lectures, and subhanAllah, some families took it and they actually did it. If their children wanted to be doctors, I told them, put them in hifz first. Let them memorize the entire Quran. That photographic memory they develop in the early teen years is undeniably a guarantee that they will go through life being able to absorb and memorize and retain anything they put their mind to. And now they're excelling, some of them, Hafiz al-Quran in law school, Hafiz al-Quran and sisters and brothers in medical school and all the other schools, their professional schools they're going to. Other things, that these physical changes also impact their hormones. And the hormones impact their emotions. And that's why one day they'll be smiling at you for a minute. And the next thing you're like, Abdullah, what happened to you? Nothing. But you look so angry. I'm not angry, but you look angry. Are you angry? No, I'm not. And then he smiles again. Right? It's an emotion and a hormonal changes that are going on. And especially for the sisters with menstruation and the cycles, there's emotional changes that are going on with those physical processes. We have to let them accept it. We have to let them know that this is all from Allah. There's nothing in Islam that's disgusting about the menstrual cycle. It has been talked about. That even the relationship, the beautiful relationship between the Prophet ﷺ and his wives during that period, not to be punster, but during that cycle, that he didn't abandon them and say to them, sit in some side of the house because you're a dirty state. Some other religions do that. For us, it was, no, this is a natural part. This is how you take care of it. Here's how you live through it. And when you come back, this is how you purify yourself, you beautify yourself, you get ready and you pray again, subhanAllah. So some of these thoughts, inshallah, there's only so much you can say, but I really look forward to the questions and answers. But these, the bottom line is basically, let's get to know first. And there are books we can recommend you to read about the stages of development of early, middle, and later adolescence. There's different stages of physical and emotional development. But not only get to know them, but then help our children to get to know them, to say to them, accept these things. It's okay that these will happen to you. But the responsibility will be on you. If you can stay awake all night, are you typing out things on the internet that would, if you froze to death, if the angel of death came then, what state would your mind and your heart be in? That would shock them to think, I should use this for the good of Islam and for the good of my soul and not against it. And if I can walk 20 miles, then am I walking towards evil? Am I walking towards things that are good? If I can have all that energy, am I using it for the best way possible? And Allah knows best that I have tremendous hope, subhanAllah. Every time I travel, I make a special section for the youth and I meet with them, and you'll be amazed the kinds of people I meet. Just one story to finish with, a boy, very tall, mashallah, handsome boy who was serving dinner in one of these MSA functions for high school. And I said to him, others were saying, what are you going to become? I'm going to university, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I said to him, what are you doing? He said, really, I just want to go to vocational school. And he felt kind of embarrassed. And I said, what will you do? He said, I want to become a mechanic. SubhanAllah, I looked at him and I said, at your age, you could do it. If you want to become a mechanic, if you're inclined towards that, but be the best mechanic and be the most honest mechanic. And I at least will rest in peace knowing that the next time my car breaks down, I won't have to have a heart attack knowing that someone's going to rip me off. SubhanAllah, the amazing visions they have. Some are talking about governments. Some are talking about becoming foreign officers, ambassadors to other nations, young people, subhanAllah. So let us embrace them. Let us teach them about these physical and emotional changes that they're going to go through. But most of all, let us train them to master this stage so that when they reach marriage age, then they are truly able to navigate through the rest of the changes that will come by virtue of another person being in their life. Wa jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Brother Altaf is talking about all these different topics and how it can be a conference in and of itself. And every time he said something, I'd write something down like, yeah, we could talk for 5 minutes on that one topic, 10 minutes on that one topic. And there's such a wealth of information out there. And him and I have been working with these kind of things for several years, so we could have probably a story for each point to kind of bring it to life for you. And I'll just kind of start off with one, and that was, I coached football for several years, and we'd get these, it was freshman football, so we'd get these 15-year-old, 14-year-old young men sometimes, 6 foot, 2 inches tall, almost full beards on their face. And I'll never forget the one time I was coaching this one kid named Jack, and he was a lineman, and so I was trying to tell him, Jack, on the snap of the ball, when we snap the ball, all you have to do is step with your left foot first and then turn this way, because the running back's going to run around you this way. So basically the idea is to get your body in between the runner and the defender. And I explained this to him like 3 different times. He snapped the ball, and every time he did it wrong. And finally, I just lost my temper. I was like, what, don't you understand? I run up to him. I was like, all you got to do it. And I'm screaming at him, and he starts to cry. And it just hit me like, this is like a grown man crying because I'm yelling at him about a football play. But that's where I learned a big lesson, that in this adolescent age, like Brother Altaf was saying, a lot of times they're fully physically developed by the time of the age of 15. And sometimes as parents, what that could do to us is give us this false sense of who they are. And so therefore we make mistakes. And so I'll start off with the first one, the first don't that I have, and that is, not to give them too much freedom, because their intellect is still developing, and teenagers are known for risky behavior. There are too many temptations out there. There's too many challenges for teenagers and tough choices for them to make. And when I go into the public school, and sometimes I'll ask a really excellent parent who's had some excellent children come through our school, of great character, non-Muslim, and I'll ask them sometimes to parents, and one of the first things they say is this, is just because they're 16 years old and they look like they're grown up, don't think that they can go to a friend's house and you don't know that friend. You go up to that door and talk to their parents, say, hi, I'm Mr. Arroyo, and I just wanted to say that, make sure there's going to be a parent here today. And so the best parents in our non-Muslim community are doing these things. They're very strict with their kids. And I see it in the public school, because they'll turn out great kid after great kid after great kid. And then I always ask them, so what do you do? And this is one of the things they do. They say, I know what they're doing all the time. And so when your kids, and they will, and mine does as well, say, that's ridiculous. And it's funny because this was up on the computer for when I was finishing up on it last night, and my daughter sits down at the computer this morning. She's like, oh my God, Abu, you're going to ruin so many teenagers' lives tomorrow. And I was like, okay, that means I'm doing my job. Not really. I'm not trying to ruin your lives, guys. But the reality is that, Mark Twain has a quote that goes something like, when I was 14 years old, I couldn't believe how stupid my own man was, but by the time I turned 21, I couldn't believe how much he had learned in 7 years. And that's the idea, that we all remember it too, when all of a sudden something clicked and everything your parents taught you, used to say to you, started making sense. Like my father always used to say to us, your friends aren't going to pay your bills. And at some point that made a lot of sense to me. This is a big one. Don't give them unsupervised access to the internet or any kind of technology. Facebook, MySpace, all these things that kids use, they're a big source of angst for them as well. There's actually a website out there. There's a couple websites out there, and I won't give them what they are, but where basically I can open up a profile on myself, and anybody who wants in the world could go on there and just make a comment about me. And all it does is open kids up to criticism by other kids, and it really depresses kids. And girls are more susceptible to this because they are more socially inclined, so they like to talk and interact with people a lot more. If you talk to boys on Facebook and girls on Facebook, boys spend significantly less time on it, but they still spend a lot of time on it. And what I found early on is I waited until like 7th grade before I let my daughter use her, an email account. And even still, I said, I always have to have your password. Now, do I check it often? I haven't checked in probably a year. But that's because early on, we established some very clear rules. Don't you ever swear electronically or say anything you wouldn't say out of your mouth. Because that's one of the things that adolescents do, is they start getting very comfortable in their texts and emails as if it's not really being said. And what I explained to them is that, don't you realize that this is even worse because it's documented that you said this? And it's very common for kids to tell other kids on the internet, just go kill yourself. And then we see this epidemic across the country where kids are actually doing it. And you want to expose your children to that. And when there's this whole phenomenon in teen year or in adolescent, junior high years of, they call it, there's the movie Mean Girls. There's Queen Bees and Wannabes is a book that was written about this, about how girls could be very verbally nasty to each other at that time. Boys may punch each other in the playground, and that's kind of the end of it. But girls will keep attacking each other, especially now on the internet. It makes it a lot easier because they almost feel like it's anonymous. So anyways, and then obviously we have the issue of pornography with boys. And what I could say to all the men in the room, if you just think back to when you were 12 years old, and if you just had instant access from the click of a mouse to infinite amount of naked women, would you have clicked that button? Think about it, and then go back home and set your security properly so your children don't have access to it. It's a Pandora's box that you don't want to open. Don't think that buying your kids things will make them happy. That's a big mistake that a lot of our parents do. And we're very blessed in our community, alhamdulillah, with a lot of wealthy parents, doctors and lawyers and engineers, and by far the most wealthy, I've heard, Muslim community in the world. And what we need to consider is that I've had kids tell me, I didn't want a bigger house. I don't know. My dad said he used to work more because we had to get a bigger house. Or, I just get in trouble in school because that's the only time my father talks to me. We need to spend time with them, buying them things. It makes them smile, but it's empty happiness. Don't argue with them when they're being difficult. They're just going to not get it sometimes. And one of the things that I always tell parents is that you have the power. You don't have to fight for it. If your child refuses to do something, and I'll tell you one story real quickly about that. One day my daughter was about 10 years old, and her mother said, go clean her room. And she said, no. And I was in the front room, and I kind of looked over like, okay, what's going down here? And then my wife goes, go clean your room right now. And she goes, no, I don't want to. And so I stood up, and I said, okay, you have a choice to make. Your mother's telling you to go clean your room. I don't understand why you're not listening, but that's not an option for you. You go clean your room right now, or there's going to be consequences. I don't want to. Okay. So she went to her grandmother's that day, and we cleaned her whole room out, everything. All she had in her room when she came back was a mattress and an alarm clock. And I said, now, in order to get anything back from your room, you have to earn it back by doing work around this. And so I paid her. I made these little pieces of paper, and I paid her money. I said, okay, your dresser is going to be $10, and she had to earn it back. That's the last time she ever did that. The point is, you have the power in your home. You can do whatever you want. You could take their cell phone. You don't have to fight. Give me your cell phone. Give it to me right now. Give it to me right now. No, give it to me. Don't fight. Just say, okay, you can call the phone company and turn it off. You don't have to fight with them. You have the ultimate power. Or when she just leaves it out, when they take it off and hide it, and that's it. So don't fight with them, especially in the teenage years, because you'll just get yourself, like the brother said, they have much more energy than you, and they'll just exhaust you. So, and sometimes they count on that, so don't let them. Don't punish them for the same crime twice. A lot of times they do something, we scream at them, and then we punish them. Now that's my point. You're either going to yell at them, and that's going to be the end of it, or punish them. Don't do both, because that's when they start saying, this is so unfair, And ultimately you kind of have. You've kind of disrespected them and you've, berated them, and then you also punish them after that. I kind of mentioned it. Don't get deceived by their size. There's still a little boy and a little girl inside that really is in need of your attention. And then the do's, I'll just kind of go through these real quickly because I know I want to give some time for question and answer. Spend time with them without work distractions. And that's hard. We're all attached to electronics nowadays, even us as adults. And spend time with them, whether it's, going to the mall and just walking and talking with them. One of the things I used to do with my daughter when I'd be really exhausted, I didn't feel like playing or anything. We got to the kind of tradition in my house was I get to tell the bedtime stories. So I'd tell her a story either from when I was a kid. And one of the things that's really about this is when I look at the Prophet's life, peace be upon him, this is one of the things that his grandfather and his uncle used to do is let him sit with all of the elders when they were talking and telling stories. And one of the traditions of the Arabs were to tell stories. And one of the things that, for example, like Adlerian psychology does is it uses storytelling. It asks clients to tell stories to learn about them and help them learn about themselves. And it helps people define who they are. So telling them stories gives them a connection to their past and a connection to you because they start seeing themselves in you. Listen to them without criticism. This is a big one for teenagers, and this is something I have to catch myself a lot. Because when my daughter's talking about something that's very girl, adolescent nonsense, I'm just looking at her and I just want to be like, be quiet. This is like ridiculous. But I just have to sit and bite my tongue and listen. And then I'll just ask a question. And what that does is it just creates that bond between you guys. There's so many times I'm sure my son gets that age, I'm going to be like, you're not that tough, knock it off. It's that same thing that teenage boys do. But the reality is just sitting and listening to them without criticism, because what happens is so many times kids will say, my parents don't listen to me, or the parents will say, my kids don't talk to me. And the reason why is because the minute they start to talk, we just want to go to the point. How are you doing in school? How did you do in that math test? Yeah, and we start asking, did you read your prayers today? Did you make your prayers today? And they start learning that if their answers aren't perfect, we're going to be bothered by it, so they don't want to talk to us anymore. Because a lot of times they didn't do everything they were supposed to do. Is your room clean? Right? All those questions, especially if we're working a lot, we come home and we start getting to the point. So we need to recognize a lot of that is because we criticize right away when they start talking. We judge. So go on vacation. Now, I grew up in a very middle to lower middle class family, and my dad made a great effort to make sure we went on a vacation, even if a lot of times it was just with that income tax check in the beginning of the year because we had 5 kids. And it doesn't have to be a huge one, but one of the things that I found is when you take your kids out of their environment, they immediately become emotionally and physically closer to you. If you ever watch, if you go to like Disney World or somewhere like that with your 13-year-old, whereas they thought they're on top of the world in the mall at their house, you take them to a world where they don't know anybody, and they immediately start walking closer to you. And then as a family, the siblings as well, usually there's like a little fight you have to get over, but they also start coming closer together. It's also ensures that you're not distracted by work and your wife's not distracted by work or your husband. Their emotions, when they're upset, it kind of goes back to what I was saying. It may seem ridiculous to you, but in their world, it's a real deal, and it is a big deal to them. Talk with them about the effects of drugs and alcohol. We really need this. If I can encourage, if there's anything you hear from my speech today, this is the one that I want you to do. There's so much research that suggests that if we just talk to our kids about it, they won't do it. And I'll give you the proof in our community. In our community, what do we talk to our kids about from the time they're young? Alcohol, sharab in Urdu, right? So they know from the time they're little that stuff makes you crazy. Don't do it. Okay, and that's why we don't do it. But no parents, very few parents talk to their kids about marijuana and cocaine and all these other things. There's a direct correlation in the research that shows that fear of the effect is directly correlated to whether or not someone will use it. And so in our community, what you find and what I deal with a lot in my office is Muslim college students smoking marijuana, but never touching alcohol and yelling at kids who drink. Now, what's that all about? That's all about you as parents teaching them when they're little that alcohol is bad, but not ever saying anything about marijuana. And then they listen to all the lies that are out there about how it's natural and it's not addictive and all these other things, which are all false. Last thing I'll say is to pray for your family. Many of the greatest uliya in our community have, over history, been tested with children that are difficult. And just because your child is struggling in one area or another doesn't mean that you've done something wrong as a parent. And sometimes it is a test, and you need to look within yourself and find the strength and the courage to do the best you can. Emphasize character, and when we think about the Prophet, peace be upon him, and how his character was the Quran, and there's so much emphasis on character, but sometimes we just emphasize the rules. And you break the rule, you're bad. Or when you didn't pray Fajr, you're bad. And yet they could be the best young man in the world in their class, and because they didn't pray Fajr, now you're sending a message they're bad. You just keep encouraging them to be the best people they can be and be the best example you can be, and make dua, inshallah, every day for your family. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakumullah khair, both of our speakers. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. I personally took a lot of notes. I have 3 girls and a lot of applications here. So, alhamdulillah, we'll try, inshallah, to post some of the notes and some suggested readings. In the past conventions, we've also had screen workshops that are very relevant to the topics that are being discussed. We'll open the floor, inshallah, for question and answers. Please raise your hands. I don't know if you have writing material, but if you have any questions, we'll take one. Yep.
They give lecture.
Give.
We can plug this one in.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Assalamu alaikum. I teach in an Islamic school, and I talk with girls with lots of issues about like dating boys and talking with them and all these stuffs. And whenever they're in the class, they listen, and whenever they're outside, I can see them doing all the things I said in the class. Why when they go outside, they didn't accept it? They do the things that they agree not to do. How to apply it?
Take a few questions.
Tough one. That's a tough one because maybe you can hold on to this. That's a tough one because that is the challenge of adolescence, and that we can teach them one thing and they can get it intellectually, but then they don't necessarily follow through on that. When it comes to girls and boys and talking to them about the things they should do or shouldn't do, and when we think about adolescence and the stage of development that they're at, one of the things that we need to consider is that they're starting to gain reason, and they're starting to gain a lot more reason and the ability to understand things more than they could in first grade. There's a reason why we don't teach algebra in first grade, because the way of thinking isn't there yet. And what we can start to do is not just talk about these are things you shouldn't do and these things you should do, but help them understand why they do it. Ask them, why do you think girls do that? Force them. It's like Socratic conversation. You just ask questions, and you say, one of the things I'll say to my daughter, like one time she got an email, a nasty email from a friend, and she said she was about to respond. I go, wait, let's think about that. Why do you want to respond that way? And have them think about what motivates their behavior, because that'll control them more than it's just a rule that I have to follow. And so, for example, what I would say to those girls is say, why do you think girls feel the need to have a boyfriend? What does that do for you? Right? And what does that mean to you? And then what do you think it means to them? And do you ever notice the characteristics of a girl who seems to be more flirtatious than other girls? Why do you think that person is like that? And so they can start looking at themselves and start thinking about human behavior, but then also, inshallah, it'll start changing, make them more conscious of their behavior and why they're doing what they're doing, and catch themselves in it. Because a lot of times, we might use words like we shouldn't be flirting with boys, but they don't really know what that, what's flirting? I think my 15-year-old still doesn't really quite get what that means. And so, it's a lot of continuous conversation and not coming down on them too hard when they do it. When you say you see them doing it, I'm assuming like flirting and things like that in the hallways. But just talking, maybe doing a little role play, like if a boy comes up to you and does this, how do you respond? That's big for teenagers, helping them, giving them tools. Like we always say no to drugs, but give them how to say no to drugs. If I come up to you and say, hey, you want to try this? How would you respond to it? And let them role play through that so they have those tools, inshallah.
So just very quickly to add just to what Brother Edmund said, the other part of the question I didn't hear, and I'm assuming there are boys in the school as well, so that you should also talk to the teachers of the boys, because what we often forget is that it takes two. I won't go into the whole tango expression because it doesn't apply to us. We don't do it. But we could, I guess, but privately. The idea is that it's almost like this, that Islamic school teachers have it the hardest, I think, in America. I have to tell you why, because you spend maybe 6 to 8 hours with the children, and then they go back, and the parents deconstruct, literally deconstruct an entire day's lessons in a matter of 5 minutes to an hour maximum. The mother may want to watch soap operas or some dish TV from something else. And the girl is like, I don't know why they spend all this money sending me to Islamic school. Because all of these, the dramas that they're watching is exactly what the teacher told not to do. On the other hand, so there's an anti-commercial. Yeah, that's an anti-commercial for dish TV and satellite and all that. Yeah, so we deconstruct it. Secondly, is that also, I think it's important for the boys to know that you don't look twice at a girl, and you don't sit there and try to flirt with her. And if that equal message is going back and forth, inshallah, then we'll have enough who know that when I'm doing it, I'm the person outside of the loop, not the cool person who is in the loop. Do you see what I'm saying? And I think we're not doing it enough for both the boys and the girls. So hopefully we can, inshallah, do that. Oh, and also some books, just very quickly. I think on Google Books, the older editions of Newman and Newman on development through the lifespan. N-E-W-M-A-N, husband-wife team. N-E-W-M-A-N, Newman and Newman. You should be Google. It's on the stages of development. That'll help you. Then Ruqayya Warith Makhsood was the principal for a long time of a boys' school in England. And she's written on Muslim teenagers. And then, of course, the most beautiful couple, Dr. Muhammad and Rida Bashir, on parenting and dealing with Muslim teenagers. Want to continue? Okay, so very quickly, there's a written question. How can we provide guidance for our kids when they're surrounded by other teenagers, Muslims, that listen to music and wear tight hijabs? That's a new one. A tight hijab. Yeah, I was thinking maybe tight jeans, but because I'm having problems with that. Not me, but I'm having problems with that they're doing that. And they're influenced by their non-Islamic acts. Well, I'll tell you what. The craziest thing is going on in the Muslim community. The craziest thing. 90% of our children are in public schools. Over 90%. I'm almost convinced of that because I do fundraising for Islamic schools. I ask them how many kids go to the school. I just know that the rest of them are somewhere in public. A kid messes up in public school, boy or a girl. You know what the parent says? That's it. You're going to Islamic school. And then the Islamic school is like, Ya Allah. Like, why? Why are we being tested with this one child will now transform our entire school from like a peaceful As-Salam Academy to like Al-Harb Academy? Like in a matter of a day, the boy arrived or the girl arrived and everyone is like suddenly changing. So the other part of it is that we don't have enough complementary programming. We have to invest in programming. We have to invest in Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and youth programming for the summers. There should be absolutely no break where these other Muslim kids are somehow allowed to have like a free passport to do whatever they want, and then our kids, my son Omar does it. Alhamdulillah, we're raising them without TV and processed sugar until now. Omar is 8 and Ahmed is 4. Omar was like 5 and until we were in the masjid, and someone was like, oh, give them sugar. Miskeen, why are you doing that to him? Omar's like, I'm miskeen? Like until then he was happy with no processed sugar and no TV. But now they say, why can't we have Xbox? Why can't we do this? They listen to music. Oh, the guitar. Oh, his mother and him have long debates on the guitar. How come they can play the guitar? How can they can listen to music? You know what I say? Our understanding of Islam is this. Work with us, and we'll together try to talk to the shuyukh and figure out what's the best alternative to what you would like to do. We don't deny it. We don't say, haram, don't discuss it, because it's in their head. I mean, he was like 1.5 when Sami Yusuf came out with Allahu, Allahu, Allahu. And in his little diaper, he was going like this, and I'm going, I can't stop that. That's fitrah. Right? I can't stop the movements. That's fitrah. I mean, I'm not going to, but I can give them alternatives. So we have to work with this to say, when you're surrounded by it, don't denigrate the other families and say, no, you know, there's a place reserved for them in hell. Some parents do that. No, that family, Allah help them because, you know, Allah knows where they're going to end up. I mean, come on, what kind of message is that? But you can say, this is what our family does. Even in my own family, his cousins may do something. So what am I going to say? Oh, there's a place reserved for them? No. I'm going to say that's what they would like to do. But let's work with them and let's find alternatives, inshallah. Brother Edmund.
So we have 1 more minute, inshallah. We'll take one question and we'll try to, inshallah, to get answers to those questions. We'll post, there are a couple of questions about websites, reading books, suggested books, inshallah. We'll do our best to get them on MASICNA.com, the convention's website. All the collaboration, inshallah, on the discussions, presentations from the speakers. We'll try to get those on. There have been a couple that are mentioned, Newman and Newman. There are storytelling by parenting through storytelling, emotional validation, screen-free parenting. We'll try to post a lot of those on the convention's website, inshallah. We'll take one more question.
One of the things that I think one of the most important ones for people to hear these questions is, the question is, can you please stress the importance of having 2 parents agree on one way to deal with the teens? That is absolutely essential, because kids at the age of 3 learn how to divide and conquer their parents. They learn if one mom or one parent, mom or dad, if dad says yes, then they're going to ask him more often, other way around. And teenagers could do the same. So you always have to present as a united front. And even if you disagree with the way your husband or your wife is handling something, you talk with them about that later. You don't talk about it with them in front of your teenager. So that's really important. You can't get through the teenage years without working together on that. And I guess I'll answer one more. We probably have about 15 seconds left. This one says, when do you start talking to your kids about sex for boys and girls? And I think you have to go to public schools when they start talking to kids about it, and that doesn't mean that we should do what the public schools are doing, but that means that their peers are learning about it. And whether it's not, if maybe it's not in their class, but in their sports program, they have them in the park district, and they're going to start talking about these things. I think it's 5th grade that they usually start talking about puberty and body changes, and then in 6th grade they start talking about sex and reproduction. So I think that's a pretty good time to talk about it with them if you haven't already. And you could give them some basics, or at least open up the dialogue with them and say, if you ever have any questions about this, ask us about it, whoever you feel more comfortable with. You don't want to force them to talk about something they're uncomfortable with necessarily, if they, but if you just let them know that you're available, and then at some point you got to lay it down for them, because they'll just come to conclusions. Kids are interesting in that they come to conclusions with the basic information they have. And a lot of times that information is wrong. And so it's important that you talk with them about these things and give them the real facts on it. And if you don't know how to start those conversations, there are suggestions out there. You could just Google it, I'm sure. A lot of this information, websites for information on drugs and alcohol, and how to talk to your kids. The anti-drug .org is an organization to help parents talk with kids about drugs. You can watch a short video with them and then talk with them about it. Okay, assalamu alaikum.
Jazakumullah khair, both of our speakers. Jazakumullah khair, our audience. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilaik. Please, we will have, we'll put a blog discussion on each of the topics, inshallah, on MAS-ICNA.com. Jazakumullah khair for your attendance. Any other questions, we'll email them to both of our speakers and try to get the answers online. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Oh, the raffle. We have a quick raffle. Please bear with us. I apologize. We have gifts, I believe. Would you like to pick one? So, ticket number 615970.
More pizza.
There you go. So, you have one pizza. Please come on up. Next one. 615956. 615-956. Please come on up. Yeah, third one, please. 615-949. 615-949. تفضل. السلام عليكم. Please. A $10 voucher at the bazaar. Jazakumullah khair. One more ticket. 615-861. 615-861. Jazakallah khair. 861. They might have left. Yeah. Okay, we'll try one more. I think they might have left. 615-860. 860. Nope. Going once. All right. 615-859. 859. 615-859. Wow. All right, let's give it a try. 615-972. 972. Assalamu alaikum. Jazakumullah khair. Another voucher. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.